Welcome back. In this video, we are going to work on the profile as we were doing in the previous video. So in the previous video, we were able to create a function to do this calculation for us. Alright, so in this video, what we are going to focus on is this, right? So when we click on view expense or view income, we want to display all the income or expenses that belongs to this particular user only. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. So inside the client, right, first of all, let's try to render the component when we click on view expense. So let me show you the component you're going to render. Alright, so if you go to template, right, we have this component already called user profile expenses. This component is going to render only the expenses list component for a user, and user profile income list component is going to render the income for a particular user. Alright, and then we need this component to call user profile content details. So it's going to be that when you look through all expenses, we're going to pass the individual expenses to this component to render. So we need this through component. So this component is going to be reusable. We're going to pass the same component to user profile expenses list to display the individual expenses. At the same time, user profile income list to display the individual income. So I have already copied. So copied this one, these three, the user profile, and then user profile expenses list and income list, and then this component, three of them. Okay, so you drag them and then place them inside the pages and then users. Okay, so let me copy rather. I don't want to copy. Remove them. So there we go. So I have all the three components being ready. So as you can see here, I have them here. Sorry, I already have it, so let me remove this one. So I already have the component, the three components ready, as you can see, profile list and this. Okay, so next let's go ahead and render the expenses list, right? So let's go to the app. As you can see here, I have already bring in those components, the two components, right? It's called user profile expenses list and user profile income expenses list, income list. And the path I use here is I make it more protected, right? And for the profile expenses list, the path is user expenses list, and then for the income I made it protected and it's called user profile income list. All right, cool. So we are done with that. So let's go ahead, and when we click on this button, we want to render those components. So let's go to the app, profile. So let me make sure that I'm not inside the template. Sometimes I get confused where I am. So inside the profile, let's scroll down and locate a button that says that view expense. Look at this button here. All right, so I think at this point you're familiar with the syntax, and I on click. If you don't have history, bring use history here. If you don't have it, use history and create instance of history here. Therefore, we can make use of history.push. That is why I made it like that. I don't want to waste my time. That's why I did it up front. So when you click on this one, it will push you to user profile expenses, and when you click on this button too, it's going to push us to user income list. So let's check it out. So when I click on view expense, there you go. Go to profile and view income. There you go. All right. So now the components are ready to fetch the details of a particular user income or expenses. So how can we get it? Let's check our redux extension too. Let me put it here so that you can get an overview clearly what's going on. Okay, so when you come to user profile, let's check it out what we have. You see that we don't have the user profile being attached to this login user. So we need to make a request or dispatch our action to fetch the income. And remember, we have the action inside the profile. It's called user profile action. So we're going to call this action inside those two components, right? So we need all these stuffs. We need use dispatch. We need okay, let me copy them one by one. I need use dispatch here. So first, let's work on the expenses. So user profile expenses. Make sure that you are on that component. So we need use dispatch, and then we also need the action. So the profile. We also need also need use history. No, okay, use effect. We need it to dispatch the action upon component mount. So make it as that use effect. Okay, there you go. So let's bring in the action. So the action here is called fetch user. Is it user profile? I want to make sure I have the auto import. That is why I'm doing that. So here gonna be the fetch, or is it fetch? I forgot the action name. Let me check. The profile action name is called user profile action. Yes, so it's called user profile action. Okay, so I have the auto import. Perfect. It's above there. So next step is that let's create instance of use dispatch here so that we can dispatch the action. And then next is let's make use of use effect to dispatch the action. Use effect. Okay, and at this point, I believe you're familiar with the syntax. Okay, so here now let's make use of dispatch and pass in our action called user profile action. So check it out. Okay, cool. So now user profile action is not defined in user profile expenses list. Oh, this one. Sorry. Yeah. So let's try. Now let's check that extension too. When I refresh, I'm on income rather. So let's go to expenses, and there you go. User profile expenses list for field, right? So you go to users profile, and now we have both the expenses and income for this user. So this is all what we need. So you might be saying that, wow, we can use the same component to render both the income and expenses, and you're right, you can do that. So I just want to make something very simple. That's why I'm going by this way. So by the end of this tutorials, you can refactor this project to suit your needs. Okay, so now we want to grab these expenses only, and then we give it to the user profile content details to render the individual ones. But before that, let's grab the piece of state from our store to get this one. So remember that we did the same for the profile, right? So we can go ahead and grab all these ones where we are getting the state for. So let's come back to user profile here, and let's call this one state. Okay. All right. So you see that here we have the profile on the user. So before we even render this one, let's try to display loading and app error if this one. So loading component, unless I make sure you have the auto import. So let's go to pages, and then error display component. Let me save again, and this is a trick to get the loading, the auto import done. There is nothing much I'm doing over here. So let's bring in the loading component. Well, do I have it? No, loading component. It doesn't want to do the auto import for me. So now let's forget about it and try the loading. Sorry, error display component. is also not important for me. So today, why? So again, let me save again, and then let me save the error display again. All right, now it will work. So come here, loading component, yes, it's working, and error display component, yes, it's also working. So I have these components ready, these ones. So first of all, let's check for loading before we even look through, right? So here, let's cut everything from here, all the content, and then let's check for loading and error first. All right, so here, let's check for if it is loading, then let's display the loading component. Otherwise, if there is app error or server error, okay, then it means that there's an error. Let's give it to error display component and pass it as a children, and in between here I inject my server error, and here I inject my app error. There you go. And otherwise, if there is profile, and remember we are working on the expenses, so profile dot expenses, okay, if dot length is greater than, less than, or equal to 0, then you will display some h2 and says that no expense found. All right, otherwise here we know that everything is in place, then we can go ahead and loop through. So dot map like that, and let's callback function, I get individual expense, and then I just render. For now, let's render some h1 text and say that, call this one expense dot title inside there. So let's save it and check it out what we have. Now there we go, you see that we have all the title here. So what you're going to do is that, well, where am I? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Here we're not going to just replay this one. So if no expense, then you say that no expense found, right? So otherwise here, let's just paste what we copied, the whole content, the whole table, right? The whole table like that. Okay, cool. So now in between the table data here, we are going to display the content here, right? So you see the user profile content goes here. So now this is the actual table. So you want to display the content in between the table, right? Because we have it. We have the content being ready to display. So here now we can loop through the content here. Okay. So here now, even better still, are we checking from here? We can say we are checking twice. So even here we can just bring it here. What do you think? Checking twice and display new content. So if there is no here, if there's no error, then we can paste our content, right? I think that one also is so good, right? And then in between here, then we also check for the income. Sorry, whether we have enough expense or not. But all the same, it's okay. So I'm showing another way. In the next video, other one to you are going to do a different way how to do the checking. Okay. So at this point, we can now loop through, right? So let's take the profile. Whatever field you go is okay. Profile. And then let's take the expenses, right? And then let's now loop through the map using map function. And then we get individual expense, and here the same process, let's render h1, and now you can see that to be inside my table, okay, dot title. So check it out. Now you see that's inside the table now. Okay, so now that we got it, let's pass these individual items to a component called user profile content details component. So let's come here and then require that component called user profile content details component. So now let's render that component here. All right, so instead of this one, let's paste the component here, and then let's pass in the individual item here, going to my expense, and then let's pass in a key property. So it's going to be underscore id dot underscore id. Okay, cool. So now let's check it out. It's empty canvas. Now you see that. So now let's go to this component, user profile details component. You see that we are getting item back here, and we can now destructure that. So let's uncomment these ones. Let's uncomment these ones. And here you see that we're just putting in the data, the title here, description here, amount. But here we're not using this function anymore. This function doesn't exist, so we're going to use our own date formatter. Okay, so with this, let's check it out what we have. Let's refresh it, and better still. So are we in the right component? Yes, this is this user details component. And why is it that we are not able to display those component details inside that? So let's see what is wrong. So let's try why it's not so. So let's go to where I think the component you are running doesn't receive the items. Oh gosh, sorry guys, it's this one is item here, because we are receiving this as item here, and we are yes. So let's save it and let's see what we have. There we go. Now we have the amount, date, and other stuff. So let's also go ahead and then render the date for us. Okay, so I think unless I delete all my record and do it again, I don't know why there's no date for this upon creating. Yes, I think there's something from my API, so I have to trash my database. Okay, so now let's render the created at item here. So let's use our util component for date formatter. Okay, and let's go to the user profile content and then bring in the date formatter. All right, and let's wrap. But before that, we need to check if there is item.created at, then and before we call our item.created at. Okay, there we go. So now if you check our state 2, I'm not sure that we have the date on expenses on those ones. So yeah, there's no date here, so it means that it was mistake we did. Okay, so let's check it out again, the API. I'm not sure if we pass in the, let's go to the model for both, whether I pass in the created at. Oh, sorry guys, pass in timestamp. Yes, so that to give to us automatically timestamp for both, and the income to, let's pass in timestamp. Oh, sorry guys, timestamp also to true for both, and the users too, because yeah, timestamp. Yes, okay, also already here. All right, so guys, this one is done. So in the next video, we are going to work on the income, or we can do it in this video. So let's quickly go ahead and also implement the income, right? So we can even copy the whole of these ones, the whole component of expenses, and place it inside and change one or two things. Yeah, so let's do that. So let me close all these ones, and then let me close the server. So a client, SRC, pages, users. Now let's click on expenses and then the income, right? Income, expenses, and income. Okay, cool. So for the user profile income, you see that we need everything. So what we can do is that for the expenses one, let's bring in all these stuffs, right, inside, because we need them. All right, we need them, everything here. And let's bring in the loading, user profile, and use dispatch and use effect, everything from here. and then let's place it also here. All right, so let's remove this one, this duplication. Okay, so now the difference here is that instead of expenses, it will be income, right? And we are displaying the same action use effect. So let's also let's dispatch the use effect. So let's go to the profile and let's go to income. Let's check if it has been dispatched. So let's refresh again and see that we have the no action being called. So user profile income list, the user profile action didn't call. Why is it so? User profile action didn't call when you go into the user income component. Oh, it works. So let's refresh again and see. No, it's not dispatching. So what is the problem? Yes. All right. So let's make sure that we are rendering the same component. Oh, we are rendering wrong component. Sorry. Yeah. So it will be this one. So let's go to the app. Sorry guys, we are rendering the wrong component. That's on my side. You see, it is from template, but it's not from template, but instead pages. That is back on my side. Users, and then let's user profile income. Yes. So now let's refresh it. Now you see that it has been fetched. Okay, cool. So what we're gonna do is that the same process. Let's check for loading. So here we are checking for loading and error only, then we display them. Okay, so let's cut everything from here and let's check if it's loading. Then let's place in the loading component. Otherwise, if there is app error or server error, then let's give it to the error display component. All right, like that. And then in between here we inject the server error, and then we inject the app error. All right, so otherwise then we can go ahead and paste what you copied. That is it. So now here we can check inside the body of my what do you call it, table. I can check for the length, right? So sorry, if profile dot income dot length is less than or equal to 0, we can see that, hey, no income found. Otherwise, we can go ahead and then map through income.map, and then we have individual income, and then now we can give this one to our content. Is it content details or user profile content details? It's user profile content details, right? And then you pass in the item and it's equal to the ink, and then let's pass in the key, also going to be the ink dot underscore id. Okay, so now we are done. You see that we have it. The same thing applies to there's no date. So when we create new one, now let's create new one and check it out. Now you see that we have the date. So where is it? Income. Oh, the date is back because now I used the timestamp. So now it's working, right? Hey, not this one. It's this one rather. Yeah. So let's go to income list. Yes. Why? When you create it, it didn't come. So I say you should redirect us to record. So let's check it out. Created it and then push us to our expenses profile component. Okay, so now you see that it's working perfectly. Just for all. So next video we're going to work on the update profile.